Welcome to Kaks Bar and Podcast, Canada's first podcast bar. What that means is you can come here for food, you can come here for drinks, you can also come here and record a podcast. Come on down, we're located in downtown Calgary, Alberta in the Beltline area. See you soon. And we're rolling. I'm here today with Mark Kondrat. Mark is are you one of the founders of Beerfest?
Yeah, so me and one of my business partners, Bill Robinson, we started it back in, we were doing other projects before we started the first beer festival, but we started early 2000s, so we've been working together ever since.
Yeah, I met Bill like months back, and we were having some drinks, and he kind of told me the origin. It was like I want to hear from your end, your side, because
there's Bill's version, and then there's the truth. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. But it was kind of like in a weird way, like a happy accident almost, right? Like you guys were doing something else entirely.
Yeah, we were doing well. So when I was in university, I also had a side, kind of a part-time job with Molson in Edmonton, and so I was involved in some small festivals and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed, the idea of doing, festivals, concerts, that sort of thing. When I moved back to Calgary, I worked downtown. And so Bill was doing some kind of side things. He was a teacher. He was doing some side things that I helped him with. And then, I don't know. I never really wanted to work downtown. That wasn't really my end game. My goal was to have my own business. And the nice thing with, when you first get a job out of university is they don't pay you very much. So to do your own thing is kind of easy, because it's like, well, I could figure out a way to pay myself at least that. And you're also okay with living like a student at the time, right? Because you can what it's like to live without money. So I quit my job, and me and Bill just started doing some projects together. Our biggest one being Main Street Sunfest, which is in Inglewood. So they still do that. So and we just would kind of like experiment with different things. We did one downtown at the Devonian Gardens called Festivus, which is like a food and wine festival. And then eventually someone just emailed us or called us or faxed us or however people communicated at the time, and just said, hey, there's no beer festival in Calgary. Why don't you do a beer festival? And that really appealed to both of us. And so we started working on that in 2004. And then we did it in 2005. And, there's something about the beer industry and the people involved in the beer industry that we've always just really loved and we've resonated with. So that was something that we knew that was what we wanted our focus to be from that point on.
Like, when you say focus, you wanted it to be around like those kind of people, you mean?
Yeah.
Like bringing that kind of culture.
Totally.
Like the fun guys,
and just they just
happy-go-lucky guys.
Yeah. There's just something about the sincerity of people in the industry. And, that's chefs, people that run restaurants, hospitality in general, right? There's just something people want to, have other people having fun, right? And there's good people. And, like one of my daughters said one time, she was making fun of me because I introduced her to someone, and when we left the situation, I was like, yeah, he's a nice guy. And she's like, you always say that. She's like, you're always like, he's a nice guy. She's a nice. And I'm like, well, I'm lucky that I get to hang out with really nice people. And so even from an early time in our careers, that just hanging out with those type of people just really resonated with me. And I was just like, if I could just spend my time, sharing their stories, that's really what we wanted to do. So once we kind of found the beer festival angle to what we love doing, we're like, hey, these are our people. Let's keep sharing their stories. So
right.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, because like a couple of my friends that started breweries, like Dan Lard with Cold Garden, and then just meeting Hendo and Adam from a Snake Lake, like there's definitely a type you start to notice that, like it's a cloth that's cut that goes into trying to be an entrepreneur, like making beer, right? But I do got to say though, like your daughter's saying everyone's nice as well. It's because everyone's like around beer all the time, so they're a little bit cut. So of course they're nice.
I think what it is though is just like, I think the people that are in it for the wrong reasons. There's a I don't know if I want to say they get weeded out, but like it takes a lot to to be in this industry, you know. And then so the passion has to be there, and so that passion gravitates to each other. And so, like you mentioned, Hendo, Dan, you know, when I was setting the floor plan for one of the festivals, just knowing both of those people, I was just like, you know what, I bet you they would like really get along. So I intentionally put them together, and just watching their energies, just kind of like they look at each other like, oh yeah, we can do, like, you know, their creativity just kind of expands from there. So yeah, it's an industry full of awesome people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. And like even Dan specifically, he's very synergetic for sure. Cause like the Old Beautiful brewery like opened like right beside them.
Yeah.
And like I know Devin as well. We all went to university together.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's like, you know, it's just cool. Like Dan literally had like that proper, you know, I don't know if he believes in law of attraction, but you know, like that abundance mentality. And
totally.
Like, you know, he didn't look at it as like a threat or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm the same way. Like I wish some more bars would open around us.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, like you go to Vancouver, you know, there's strips of bars beside each other, and what do you naturally do? You kind of bar hop back and forth, right? Like the more the merrier, you know.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if this relates to what you're saying, but I do believe that the more the merrier for sure, especially if it's a bunch of people that really care about what they're doing. But I was reading this thing where, you know, you'll notice, like, let's say car dealerships, right? You'll see like they bundled, like there's like all of a sudden there's like a Ford and a Chevy, and I was always kind of curious why that was. But this example was a pop machine. So if there's like if there's a Pepsi machine, it does better if there's a Coke machine right beside it, and vice versa.
Yeah. Because
if it's just one by itself, and this may apply to bars as well, I don't know. But if there's just one by itself, the question that a customer asks is, should I buy a pop? And so then it's either, yes, I'll buy a pop, or no, I won't buy a pop. If you see two together, it's, should I buy a Pepsi or should I buy a Coke? So the idea is they are going to buy a product. They're just choosing between the two. So when you have more in the area, so to your point with Cold Garden, the more that you have in Inglewood, it's not, oh, should I stop at the brewery? It's like, oh, which one should I go to first? And then so he gets them in there. So I think the law of attraction is huge. And, you know, you look at the Manchester area, they've really succeeded with that. And Inglewood is the same way.
Okay. What's the Manchester area? Sorry.
Like what they used to call the Barley Belt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like Banded Peak, Annex, all of those guys. Yeah. Like, you know, before, I always used to joke with them before.
That's where I bumped into you that one time, right?
Yeah, we were at Banded Peak.
Right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But, you know, you think about before those breweries and distilleries, you know, started popping up there, the only reason you would ever go to Manchester is if you had your car towed. Like there was no other reason to go to that neighborhood, right? And now, all of those people being there, Uncommon Cider as well, it's like there's so many good reasons to be there.
Yeah, it's almost like that's like that's like there's industrial area for like warehouses now. That's like this beer town.
Totally.
Whatever, you know? Right now, like what were you saying? Oh, first, sorry, I want to backpedal. What did you go to school for? You went to U of A.
Yeah,
right?
I went for commerce, so business.
Okay, so business in Edmonton, U of A. Okay.
Yeah,
and then when your downtown job, what was that like?
So it was a brief set. I had a blast downtown. I just it was with an oil and gas software company in sales, and lots of like really, really great people.
Yeah.
I had a hard time, you know, wearing a suit and taking the train. Part of me, I have a hard time with routine. And so that whole, you know, putting the suit on and, you know, going downtown and, you know, I struggled with that. It's something that I've always struggled with is like, you know, routine. I've had to force myself into routine as an entrepreneur because you need certain rigidity in your day. But certainly as a young person, the whole like, shit, I got to do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. So
okay, well then how did you like? Because I'm kind of the opposite. So like I almost like went to the military mentally because I just like I like regimen. I like to know whatever, like this time train, this time sleep, this time eat, and then that way I can compartmentalize my energy and mood. But if you don't like routine, then how do you get things done back in the day? Like you know, because wouldn't you just lose track of everything? Well,
I don't know. I'm pretty good at like I'm self-disciplined. Like it's a process that I've learned through my career. Because what I realized is you do need routine, right?
Yeah,
if you
like
don't,
some
if you don't
routine,
have
yeah.
routine, then there's a little bit of chaos in your life. And so what I've kind of implemented over my career is my own personal routine, but it's not necessarily like 80% of my day is very like, there's no day that's the same.
Yeah.
So there's aspects of the day that are the same. So like, you know, like I've created a project called Explore 84 where it's all about, you know, addressing your like mind, body, soul on a daily basis so that you can
What's this called, sorry?
Explore 84.
Explore 84. Yeah,
And
that's your other podcast, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
So the biggest thing is you do need routine. Like there's no doubt about it, whether you like routine or whether you don't like routine. It's just a matter of, you know, what does your day look like, right? Like, and who gives you that routine? Some people like when the routine is kind of given to them, and you know, it's just like, and that makes them feel better. It's like, okay, I know everything that I need to do. It's laid out for me. Whereas for me, I like routine, but I also like to be able to kind of slot it into how it works best for me and my brain.
Okay, so like walk me through your day then right now. Like as in what you said, no day's the same, but like today you're here on the podcast, but then do you head back to the office and start doing Beerfest stuff, and then and then you know, like, I mean, and you have 2 kids, you said, right?
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
So 13 and almost 11.
Okay, so but they have routine because they're in school.
Yeah, and they're very, actually they love routine. So for me, like a typical day would be I just wake up. I always try to do like the 5 a.m. thing, but I fail kind of at that. But I'll wake up say around 6 o'clock.
In bed by 10 p.m. the night before, or
typically like I used to be able to stay up later, but I just I get tired early, and so I do get good sleep. I'm not one of those guys that can, you know, I don't need 10 hours of sleep, but you know, give me a good 6 hours of sleep, I'm good to go.
Okay.
I'll wake up early, and I really keep the first couple hours of the day for myself, and so. I try not to work right now. I'm pretty busy, so I do get some work done, answer some emails, but it'll be, you know, walk the dog, meditate, read a book, go for a run.
How long do you meditate for?
So I have my minimum. So every day I have to meditate for 5 minutes as my minimum, just so that I can address the fact that I do need to kind of have some time to kind of just be with my own thoughts. Some days it's half an hour.
Do you sit and do like a Buddhist pose or
not really? No. I just sit and kind of figure, like, just kind of like, you know, try to focus on my breath. I would say that's one area of my life that I really want to kind of lean into is learning more about meditation. I would say I'm a meditation enthusiast or hobbyist. There's so much more I can learn on that, but certainly just taking the time to kind of address that. And so, my mornings would be, you know, make sure I get my run in, make sure I get a little bit of reading, my meditation in. And then, you know, I get, you know, part of what I like about being an entrepreneur is you get to set your own schedule to some degree. Obviously you're beholden to, you know, the people that you work with and stuff like that. But I get to walk my kids to school, even though they're too old and they don't want me to walk them to school. I get to do that. And so I do have my routines. It's just
how long do you run for? You said you run in the morning, like
so. I run. So my minimums. So every day I have to either run, bike, or I swim. I'm trying to swim. I look like a dying seal when I swim, but I'm trying to get it in because I have a couple of triathlons that I'm working towards this summer.
Nice. Okay.
But so if I run, my minimum is 5K. That's just for me. So it's just
about
like
half hour then.
Yeah. So I can run, and just like, so I just try to get it in. What I found, especially being in the beer industry, is, and for myself, I don't want to speak for everybody, but you know, there's a tendency to kind of live an unhealthy lifestyle if I didn't kind of check in on myself on a daily basis. So for this, it's just a way to say like, okay, am I addressing my health in all the ways? So mind, body, soul, so that when I go to the office, I'm, you know, a good version of myself for the people I work with. You know, at home, I'm hopefully a decent version of a dad. Probably some work to do in the husband realm, but you know, I want to make sure I'm addressing those on a daily basis, because what I found is, especially with project work like festivals, oftentimes, say a month before a festival, I would just be like head down, and I'd be like, okay, I don't have time to address, you know, my physical health, my mental health. So then you come out of a festival going like, man, where was I? For like a month, I've just kind of been, you know, working. And so to me, it's just like, hey, address your health on a daily basis and you'll be a better version of yourself for every other part of your life, right?
Man, I completely agree with that. I'm big into working out. I've been in shape my whole life. I never got fat, if you will, and but this business it was the first time it totally interfered with that.
Yeah.
Like a couple weeks would go by, and I didn't go to the gym because I'm just doing everything here that I have to do. But like lately, same thing with you. I just said no. This isn't like I got to make this back into the day. And it's totally made a difference again in my mood, my like anxiety levels come down, sleeping better. And I was like, I already knew all this. How did that slip out of my rhythm? And then when I think back, it's like, oh, like it just naturally did, because one minute you're taking on that extra phone call.
Yeah.
Then you're taking on that extra podcast. Then the next, you go home planning, okay, I'll fit the workout in at 10 PM, but you go home and, you cat pissed everywhere.
Yeah.
Now next, it's like, it's all gone. But yeah, no, but like I'm trying to fit it in the mornings now too. Like whether it's even 20 minutes, like usually I like an hour for a good, like solid circuit training with the weights. But now even if it's 20 minutes, like I need to get that heart rate elevated and I need the blood to like, it has to be hard-ish.
Totally.
It can't be like grab a pencil and curl it 50 times and be like, hey, I did my workout.
No, and totally. And I think, so I don't know. I believe that I hate saying as a society because it's such a general term, but like we don't give people enough kind of ability to just take time for themselves. Like we don't glorify that. We glorify the people who don't take time for themselves, who are always running off their feet. And, it's not, obviously as an individual, it's not the best thing for them, but collectively it's not the best for us as a society because we're not bringing the best version of ourselves to every aspect of our lives. So we're not being the best employee, boss, parent, spouse, like whatever that is. And so to be able to address that stuff and then take on your day proactively versus reactively, it's the best way to do it, you know?
Man. Yeah. Like that verbiage you just used, it's like I started realizing I was taking on my day reactively, but then when you do something like work out in the morning or find time or create time for yourself, like the way you create that morning little few hours, like that, then you're proactive. Now you're controlling the day, or at least controlling the way. Well, you're not controlling entirely. I mean, things keep coming up, but you're not reacting because you're almost ready for it.
Well, and then for me, what it does is like, so knowing today that I had to be here for noon, it's like, okay, so like I know that I can take all my meetings at home after I'm done. Like drop my one daughter off at school,
at 1 p.m.
And then sorry,
you drop your
no. I dropped her off this morning.
Okay.
So then I took all my meetings this morning from home. So I just like Google Meeting and all that kind of stuff. And then when I was here, I knew, okay, well, I have like a couple hours where I can do this, and I'm not stressed. I don't have like things coming at me right now, right? And then when I'm done here, then I'll deal with all the shit that's on the emails and stuff. But for me, it's just being able to kind of set the tone for my own day. It really helps me like mentally for sure.
Yeah. The like you've been an entrepreneur for a while here, and like and Beerfest has been going strong. The beginning stages of it, was it smooth sailing, or was there just like loads of loads of challenges and things like that? Or did you guys just kind of knock it out of the park? Right
no,
away?
I don't think we've ever felt like we've knocked it out of the park. It's been like, and I don't ever feel like there's ever been smooth sailing. There's always something, but again, that's why you have to be organized, and that's what we've learned is like, we've really work hard at implementing processes and stuff like that, because things will come up. And so if you don't control all the variables that you are able to control, and then you're dealing with those things, and then you're also dealing with the things you can't control. So create systems so that everything that's within your control is taken care of, so that those wild cards or those kind of crazy things that are happening, it's like, okay, now you're addressing those. And the thing too is once we get to a certain point where we feel like we have it, figured out, I mean, you never have it figured out. Like,
Yeah.
Right before COVID, we had our best beer festival probably we'd ever had. And we're like, man, this is awesome. And then, for 2 years we couldn't do festivals. Right.
Yeah.
So there's always something lurking. There's always, something that might happen. So for us, it's like, just be as prepared as you can. And that's really all you can do.
Yeah. I take it you like, because of the way you take care of yourself, like, do you not get stressed out? Or do you like,
oh no, I'm chewing my nails all morning. I get the reason I try, like, so, cause I'm not naturally like, I've had to learn to do all this stuff. Yeah. Like, I'm not naturally.
You seem real chill. Like, that's the thing.
No,
like,
I'm high. No, no. It's because I'm not naturally like that. Like, I have a lot of energy, and if not channeled through certain, if not channeled intentionally, it just kind of comes out sporadically, and that's not really a healthy way to live. So, to be honest with you, I remember, 10 years ago, just sitting and, looking at everything that I had and just kind of being like, I need to learn how to, deal with things in a proper way for me to sustain my life and for me to grow. And so it's not that I have everything figured out. It's that I don't feel like I have anything figured out, which is why I need to address it on a daily basis, and make sure that I don't go a month without, because that energy has to go somewhere, right? And so if it's not channeled in the right direction, it's going into negative directions. And if you talk about wanting to be a successful dad, husband, entrepreneur, whatever, you have to really focus on taking care of yourself first. So that's just why I always focus on that.
Yeah. And I guess just kind of like something I take it away from it is that you carve out a first few hours of the day. That's the you taking care of yourself part.
Yeah, because like, so how you said it, like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll do it later in the day, and then just later in the day you just get busy, and that's, and so if you're coming home at 8 at night or whatever, if you're putting your kids down, whatever that your kind of routine is at night, it's like, Jesus, at 9 o'clock, do I really want to go for a run? Like, not really, right? So not to say I won't go for a run, but I would rather not.
That extra resistance.
I'd rather just do it in the morning, right? Yeah. If I can. So, and everybody's different, but for me, if I can just kind of check that stuff off in the morning, it's way better.
Yeah. Right now, the kind of challenging times, well, for us, is just because like sometimes we close the bar, right? Like with the bartender.
Yeah.
So then like that, whenever those shifts come up, it's like, man, that like I'm not going to sleep 3 hours and then try to get after it. Like I've tried that before, and there was some diminishing returns because it was like, mentally I was like, I got it done, and by the time I got here, I was like,
like totally,
So I'm like, hey, so I don't know. That's what I mean by I would prefer routine. Actually, I guess what I'm really trying to say is I would prefer a sleep routine.
Yeah,
I want at least that, like,
Yeah, see, your life is challenging because closing down.
Sometimes you got to open the next day. Yeah. So like we close at 2 a.m. Say you get out of here at 3, and then you get home at 3:30, and then you have, like, we open at 11 a.m. So you have to be back by at least 10. Yeah, like that's not a lot of hours to get anything done other than try to sleep. But even that is kind of, like I don't like the clopins, but they do have to happen from time to time because of circumstances, and it's just like But I remember too many of those started adding up. And like it's not good. Like you can't sustain it.
It's not sustainable, right? And you have to be honest with yourself about like what's sustainable, and because at the end of the day, if you're just like a shell of a human being, you're not really helping the team very much, right?
We all learned that the hard way. Sometimes circumstance calls for it, and then we just mentally prepare. Like, hey,
big time,
But obviously, the goal is to get out of that, get into a system where you can sleep properly. So that'll take time, I guess.
I think on some level, like people, that's the grind that people glorify, is like they don't think about like, because sometimes you have to do that. Like that's just being in business. That's just being an entrepreneur. But it's not a sustainable lifestyle. So you have to figure, okay, I get that I'm in this, but how do I figure out a way that I won't be in this? Because if I continue this way, I'm going to just grind myself into the ground. And then where are you at, right?
Well, I kind of set up a like 3-day cycle in my brain whenever that happened, because like I already knew like I can't do this every day, but if I do it day 1, as in that's the clopin, I know day 2 is going to be a bit of like a like a struggle to reset. But then by day 3, like I will make sure I leave by 5 p.m. and go and like just, you know, I'll just be like, hey, like if like unless there's a fire, like that's the days you have to just like say whatever happens, you know, because you know you weighed out as much as you could, that like how much can I be here, and before I have to just kind of like trust that things won't completely go sideways, you know.
And that's like, the cool thing about that too, right? Is then you get to, you know, you have to have honest conversations with your team, and it's amazing how much people will support you and help you, because, you know, like they're going through the same things. Like they also want to live sustainable lives, right? And so collectively you kind of figure out like, okay, you know, how can we do that? And that for me is what's been helpful is, you know, anytime that I'm struggling, I do talk to my team. Like I used to be terrible at delegating. I'd just be like, no, I'll do that. And I delegate a lot. I still do a lot, but I delegate a lot. And like the team that I work with is awesome, and they do a great job. And so it's just like, man, I wish I would have learned how to have these conversations and been honest about, you know, what my limits are years ago. It would have been more helpful. But
that's a whole other can of worms. It's just because I remember, like, this is kind of a bad example, but you know, there'd be times back in the day when I was a bartender, and then the boss was going through what I guess I'm going through now, would delegate like, okay, Shawn, you got to step it up. You're closing bar now, like by yourself or whatever, right? And then it's kind of like, I'm like, okay. He's like, he's like, cut the server too. We got to save on labor. And then I'm not gonna lie, like naturally, I don't like, I just a little. Like I don't work there anymore, so I don't care. You know, that's when you kind of took some liberties, you know, like you know, like, and then invited your friends in or whatever, and then like, so then my brain was kind of like just thinking back, well, if I did that, what are these guys doing? You know,
totally.
You know, and like, but then I'm also trusting, like, you know, in the end, it all worked out. You know, it's like, just got to make sure that whoever's you're trusting, like, you trust they're an adult. You know,
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
and that does suck, because certainly, trust gets broken and stuff like that. But so I don't know because you're in such a different world than me, like in terms of like, because you guys are open, you know, it's an everyday thing, and like you said, like the hours, you know, you're open at a certain time, you close at a certain time. There's a structure to it that I don't necessarily have on a day to day. Like I'm more project driven. I used to own a small sports store, and that was one thing that I did struggle with was, you know, we were open 7 days a week, and this before I had kids, and you know, I was okay to be there every day. Like I enjoyed hanging out there and stuff like that.
What was the sports store?
So it was in Cochrane. It was called Edge Sports. But, you know, that was one thing that I struggled with. It's just the way that my brain works is that whole, like, you know, hours of operation thing. Because it's a struggle. It's just like, hey, regardless, that the doors have to open at, like for you said 11, right? Yeah. And so it's just like, okay, like at the end of the day, you have to make sure the doors open. Somehow the doors have to open, right? So if someone's sick, it's you that's coming in.
Oh, quite literally.
That's kind of a heavy burden to hold on a daily basis.
Like I live the closest here too, so like doesn't matter if say I left here late, or say I had some drinks after with some friends, like doesn't matter. Like I'm the closest guy, so I have to come let in the back house guy, and like even though I just have to get up, roll up out of bed, let him in, and go back to get 2 more hours of sleep. But but even that, I'm starting to notice, like, I'm getting old, man. Like that's not sustainable either. I mean, probably could pull that off all the time in my 20s, but you know, I'm damn near 40 now, so it's like this is not.
You just don't want it. You get to a point where you just you don't want to do it. But that's all. I
physically don't feel good. Like, it's like I'm like something's off. I remember it's like one day I couldn't recall like someone's name. Like it's like that part is just literally like, hey, it's just not going. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I slept, and all of a sudden, like everything's right back, and I can completely pull that out of my brain. Totally. I was like, man, this is a form of sleep deprivation. Like I'm actually experiencing it in real time now. Like, but it also makes me realize, like, a lot of these people that are in militaries that are out there doing these operations, like, and not sleeping, and like these are the guys handling like weapons and having to like
totally,
you know, deliver.
But you know, and that's why they live in such a structured world, right? Where and that's why certain level of structure is so important, because if you're so then you don't have to make those. So much of what they do is just there's not heavy thought going in constantly. It's just procedure. It's just, you know what I mean? And so the more that you can create procedure in your business, the more you can kind of relax in a way too. Yeah.
Mark, shifting gears here, like let's get into your podcasting, you know,
Yeah.
Obviously I'm a podcaster, you're a podcaster, but is that a point now where anyone could be a podcaster? You just do a podcast. It's kind of like having an Instagram page, like just make one, right? But what was how'd you get started in that? And yeah, like in right now, like all of Mark's podcasts will be in the show notes there. He has Let's Meet for a Beer. He also has what was the other
Explore
one?
84.
Explore 84.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell people about both of those real quick.
Yeah.
And let me know about how you got into podcasting. Like
so for me, like podcasting was part of my, I guess, my journey that has eventually come to be Explore 84. But really what it was, I was never, when I was a kid, I won't say I wasn't curious, but there was a weird thing, and I probably still exists, but it was like the smart person knows the answers and the dumb person asks the questions. That's how it felt like when I was a kid, like, because I have older brothers and it would be like, like, for example, when I was a kid, I don't think a dad ever said, I don't know. Like, no matter what you asked a dad, they would answer. And like what you realize as you're older is like half the answers, they were full of shit. They just didn't have the ability to say, I don't know. And so back when I was growing up, I felt like, if I was, because I was the youngest kid, so I was always asking the questions.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but my older brothers would have the answers, or my dad would have the answers, or whatever. And so, it wasn't that they were intentionally trying to make me feel like an idiot, but I felt like an idiot. And so what you realize, or what I realized, is that you grow up not asking questions. And so if you think about, like, you're at a certain point in your life where you're no longer in school, you're doing something that people just assume you must know what you're doing, and there's no outlet to be curious. There's no outlet to ask questions. And so for me, what I started my podcast as an experiment for myself, which is, how can I learn how to ask questions, and how can I learn to be curious? And also because there's,
did you feel like you weren't growing anymore? Kind of.
I wasn't growing at all. I was in a very stagnant kind of like, is this all there is to life kind of mode? Probably, And so for me, I was also lucky enough that in what I do, I get to meet so many cool people. And so it was like, there's so many cool people that I know in my circle that I just have been lucky enough to meet over the years of doing business. And I had never really asked them what their story was, because I didn't know how to. I was like actually scared to be like, because
even when you guys are drinking together.
Yeah, but like not really. Yeah, so it was just a way of like, but like I mean like meaningful conversations. Like what I found when you're sitting there drinking with somebody, oftentimes it's like your facade and their facade having a conversation. So it's not like a real conversation. It's just like two guys puffing their chest, being like, I'm fucking awesome because of this. Oh yeah, well this is why I'm awesome. Yeah, and I kind of like wanted to get away from that. I wanted to be like, hey, who are you like really? And the thing about that is like, I was as guilty of that as anybody. It wasn't like I was trying to have meaningful conversations and everyone else was like puffing their chest out. I was having the shallow conversations. They didn't mean anything to me. And so podcasting was a way of kind of like getting out of my comfort zone and just being like, okay, I want to have real conversations. I want to get to know who these people are, like, sincerely. And so it was a challenge to myself. And it was also an opportunity to just really, put a spotlight on some people that I just really thought were amazing human beings. I used to come home after a meeting and I would tell my wife about like, oh yeah, I met this one, woman who works here, or I met this guy who works here. And like, as much as she cared, it can only be so interesting, right? But I'm like, but there's an audience of people who genuinely would be fascinated by that person. So I wanted to kind of figure out, how can I kind of amplify their story? And so, and then at the same time, talking to my friend Jim Button, who started Village Brewing, he was dealing with cancer. So he passed away of cancer last year. When we were having a coffee one time, he was one, I would consider him a mentor of mine. And, you know, I was explaining to him what I was going through. And one of the things that he said to me was he started a blog to share his story. And through writing, he found his voice. And so he learned how to write, and he was a very effective writer. And he could really articulate what he was going through really, really well. It was like his blog was super emotional. And so I thought, well, maybe podcasting is a way that I can find my voice, and I can learn how to have sincere conversations with people, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really what it's become. So up until this point, my podcasting has really truly been like a total, just like a personal experiment for myself.
Okay.
I have a vision for how I want to grow it, but I've always done it in a way that it has to be sincere to me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's why I got into it, and that's why I love it still.
Okay. The right now, like how many years have you been doing it now? It's been,
I've been probably doing podcasts for, I'm going to say 5 years, because COVID was 4 years ago. So I was doing it. I celebrated my 1 year of doing podcasts right before COVID. So yeah, let's say 5.
Okay. The so your episodes are because I caught a few of them, and like I listened to one with Hendo while I was in the gym. This is like months ago though, because you guys did this one like
we did that last BAM festival, so a year and a half ago, kind of thing.
Yeah. At the beginning, it sounded like you guys were both hungover or something like that.
He probably was.
Yeah.
I'm a super nerd when it like at my festivals, like during the week of my festivals, like I don't. Like I'm like all work. So, but though he's a beauty. Yeah. But and I've known Hendo for a long time, because when we first started doing the craft beer festival in Banff, he was the distiller at Park when they first opened. Yeah. So I've just always been fascinated by him and his passion for what he does. Yeah. And so, anytime I get a chance to connect with him and find out what he's doing, right? Because he's always got something that he's working on.
The genre of people you talk to, like they primarily are in the industry, right? Like
no, and that's why, like, so my podcast has evolved, and not evolved, but like changed course as I've kind of like reflected on and been like, hey, what am I doing here? I found that I was at a certain point getting not stuck with that, but like I was just like, what I want to do is, I definitely want it to be industry people, but I really want it to be, it's more about conversations over a beer.
Yeah.
And that's why I called it Let's Meet for a Beer is, that's how I would just start. If I was talking to someone, I'd be like, okay, well, let's just meet for a beer. And so that's just a natural thing for me to say. Like, if we're going to meet about something, let's meet for a beer.
Yeah.
And so it's not conversations about beer, it's conversations over beer is how I would describe it. But having said that, I find a lot of the most interesting people that I get to meet either work for a brewery or, in the hospitality industry to some degree. So a lot of them end up being, brewers and people that work in that kind of industry.
Yeah. But they're also kind of like-minded to you. Like, it's probably the energy you're drawing in. Yeah, my show is so all over the place. Like, I had like a flat earther on, and I had on like a comedian. Then I had on a fitness influencer. Now I had on, yourself. And like right now I'm really learning a lot about like myself as well. Because that was something that I didn't like. Sometimes I feel like I'm just drawing people into my style of a convo, if you will.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, a topic would segue into one of those topics, and then I'm actually discovering in real time how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, and I'm sitting there like, who am I?
Yeah.
So in a weird way, this podcast has also been an odd experiment for myself as well. I get that. And I got into the same reasons as you. Like I like talking to people and getting to know people, because the world's so huge. And I remember when I was working, like I used to work in oil and gas too. Like that office world, like you kind of stop growing fast.
Yeah.
Like you might learn a little bit new trick to do your job, but you're tired by the time it's 5. Then you're like, hey, I better go to the gym if you do that. And then it's 9 and you kind of watch a show and the day is done. And and then you didn't really make any new friends. You didn't really and then even when you go on vacation, that's only 2 weeks out of the year that you did something like out of the norm. Like, at least this, I'm like, I feel like I'm always like, I know I'm growing.
Yeah,
and
you're
evolving.
challenging yourself, and you're staying curious, and you're like
Staying
every day
curious,
it's kind of like, oh wow, I learned, and it's such a cliche, but like honestly, like the second you stop being curious, life gets so boring. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I mean, I do think that that's a lot of mental health issues these days, is people like, they don't even realize like they're not curious anymore.
Yeah.
And they're just overstimulated, and they don't take time for themselves. And because I had this I like the last podcast I published, her name's Lexi Burt, so she has a podcast called a Quest for Wholeness. It's about holistic health. And on that pod, she pointed out like I think it was like the four realms of here, I actually had in my old notes here, the four pillars of like of your health. It's biological, psychological, sociological, spiritual. Four pillars, I guess.
Yeah.
And like nowadays, when I look at people, they like they don't come close to having any of those four things in check or looked after, you know. And then like by doing a podcast, like, I mean, you're checking off so many of these when you meet constantly new people, and like and engage like in a real like because this is pretty intimate in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like, when else would you and I have sat and talked like this?
Oh, exactly.
Like,
and that's the thing, right? Like,
you know?
you certainly, and so I think that's what is nice about podcasts is it does hopefully encourage people to have, real conversations, and not just be, because like when I first started doing podcasts, it takes a while to, like, I guess what Jim would have said is like, find your voice. And so say things, it's like, okay, am I saying what I want to say, or am I saying what I think you want me to say? Like, you know what I mean? And so you have to, it took me a long time to really be, it's like, okay, this is me talking. This is not like the image that I want people to think of me as, like.
Right. That's a very fascinating thing to point out too. But sometimes you have to do that though. Like, because ultimately, a lot of people you meet, like, they are strangers in the end, right? So like, it's kind of like you're doing your first impression, right? That's why, I don't know, like when I shoot some podcasts with some guests multiple times, and then I'm noticing even myself, I'm getting looser. They're getting looser. Next thing you know, like, you're actually seeing like a real time, like friendship kind of like start up. And then next you know it, when you meet up, you don't even talk about, you just start talking like you're having a beer.
Totally.
And then, about because I'm a huge like MMA fanatic, right?
Yeah.
And like, I love mixed martial arts, like huge UFC fan and everything. And like, if you get on a topic like that with me, then all of a sudden I'm almost in like first person mode. Like now it's like blah, like 100 miles per hour ideas coming to my head. And so I don't know, it's just fascinating. And I just know so many people, they don't really even know how to talk to people anymore. Yeah. They think they do.
And you just get in, and that's where I was at. You think like, you get into a routine of even just like, I had friends where I just knew exactly how the conversation would go. Like, it'll be like, okay, we'll start off with this, and then 2 beers in, we'll start talking about this, then another beer, and it's just like, and you just end up leaving going like, ugh, I feel gross. Like, I don't feel like we didn't talk about anything. Yeah. And that, I'm not saying that was their fault. Like, it was more my fault, I'm sure, than their fault. But whatever the case is, it's like, when you feel like you're allowed to express yourself and they're allowed to express themselves sincerely, then you have a good conversation. So yeah, to your point, the second, third time you meet up, you're excited because you get to bullshit about the stuff that you actually care about, as opposed to saying, okay, when they say this, I will say this, and I will they will agree with me.
It's kind of like going on dates. It's now you're on the third date. Now you're like getting loose or whatever.
Yeah. So, but if you start off, like, the beauty is though, so then start off on your first date loose, and then they don't have to learn who the real person is. Like, oh wow, I actually don't like you.
Have you ever had some podcasts go south?
But more so just because of me though. Yeah. Like, I'll think something's funny and it just doesn't quite land, or something like that.
What was that show you were talking to me about? You remember back when we were at Bandit Peak?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that show? I never got around to checking.
I think you should leave. Probably.
That's what it's called.
I don't know. Like, was it an awkward show?
Yeah, you were telling me about it, and then.
So I think it was.
I've been seeing it on Netflix.
I think it was Ben from Dandy. He suggested to me.
He kind of has like the character has kind of like a bald shaped head. I don't know. His face is very.
It's a very unique. Yeah, he's a very unique looking person. I think it is. If it isn't, that's the one I'll recommend right now. It's and it's one of those things you either like it or you hate it.
Yeah.
I like it. My wife hates it. It's so dumb, and it's like cringe comedy. It's like just the terrible situations, but it's like anyway. To answer your question on like, have I ever had any go south? Like, I've never had like arguments like where it's just like, we're like fighting on the podcast, but I've had podcasts that I haven't aired.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. I have a handful now that I haven't aired because it actually went south, and then I was like, whoa, I didn't expect it to go like that.
Well,
because I was fully being myself, and then the other person, well, a few times they were being themselves, I was being myself, and I started realizing, I'm like, holy, like we're not on the same wavelength on values, viewpoints. Yeah, like I actually don't like you.
Yeah.
And then they had another guy just completely like I wanted him on because we had a good conversation over beer, like on a Friday, and by the time the Tuesday came to me on the show, it was like he was in this like it was just I was like, this is dude, like just stop.
I want that guy that was at the bar.
The real like
totally.
Not and I was like, and it was just the blandest conversation, and afterwards I was kind of like I actually had to stop. I'm like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, like what do you mean? And I was like, do we need to have a couple more drinks?
Yeah, exactly.
Get you back, and then and after that I was just like, nah, man, like this is and then I've had a couple where full on like
I get like, for me, I still get really nervous before I do podcasts, and I admire people that are able, like, a lot of people won't believe this, but I actually do prepare a lot for my podcast because I get nervous about, the flow of the conversation. I'm actually trying to prepare less so that they can be a little bit more spontaneous. But what I find is the ones that think will be easy oftentimes become hard, and the ones I think are going to be hard often are easier than I thought. So I never know what I'm going to get myself into, and so that's why I like to be prepared. And sometimes it's just the people I'm like, oh, this will be great, this will just, and then they just, like you said, kind of clam up, and I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be way harder than I thought.
That's why I always try to get people to drink, like before, like I drink on probably 9% of my podcast, but this one's 12 p.m. That's the reason why I'm not like knocking back a few, because I have like so much.
You got a to-do list.
That's why I was aiming for, hey, can you do 7 p.m.?
7,
and we can loosen up. But I can go both ways, But I do love the buzz of beer. And then...
what I find is like I get like, if I'm 2 beers in, like I actually have a noticeable like slur when I talk.
Really?
I'm like, I actually can't, because my, it's called Let's Meet for a Beer, right?
But we had like at least 3 pints together, I think, at Bandit Peak. I don't remember you slurring, unless you were. And then
no, I just noticed it like when I listen to a podcast. If I know that I was like crushing beers while I was doing the podcast, I'm like, yeah, I can tell. So I try not to, but whatever. The odd time
do you prefer podcasts? Okay, hold on. Do you prefer to talk to people when you're a little bit drunk, or do you like it sober?
I like it sober. Like I honestly don't. I don't like to do anything work related if I'm drinking, or if I'm like if I like to have like all my senses. Some people think, oh yeah, I operate a little bit better if I, have an edible or whatever. I've never been under the illusion that I operate better after beer or cannabis. That was one of the podcasts that I had to not air. Is I had someone from the cannabis industry come in, and I'm a lightweight, so it was like constantly like, me ask a question, him answering, him saying, oh, sorry, what was the question? Me saying, I don't remember. And it was kind of like that back and forth. And so the next day, we're actually friends, and we biked together, and we met up, and I'm like, that was completely unusable. He's like, no kidding.
That's why like I have such appreciation for I don't know how you feel about it, but like I love him, Joe Rogan, like because like you've learned now what he does is everyone thinks it's easy. I'm like, dude, it's not. Like this guy's so dialed in. Like he knows how to like get out of a lull. He knows how to carry a conversation. He knows how to like frame it in a way to draw something out of a person.
Yeah.
Like, he'll just talk about stuff that he's curious about when when all else fails, if you will, like,
and I think that's why
all that, you know,
I think that's why he's successful is he comes at it. I believe he comes at it with genuine sincerity. He doesn't, and I know that some people are, you know, they're anti Joe Rogan, and I frankly don't care. But if you actually, for me personally, because I actually, when I listen to him and I really kind of see like and there's a genuine sincerity. He doesn't come in with, because people try to peg him as a lefty, as a righty.
Yeah.
He's been called everything.
Yeah.
But I think he doesn't necessarily have an ideology, and so he comes with a curiosity, and you can kind of like, you can move his needle. You know what I mean? I think that's so important, is like, people need to be able to, you know, if you are having a true conversation, something you say should be able to resonate with me and be like, give me an opportunity to kind of like, okay, I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
That's the only conversations I'm really interested in. If I'm having a conversation with someone who's like ideologically this, that's not really a conversation. So I'm like, okay, well,
and also to piggyback off of that, people need to live a lot of life to have some fantastic conversations. You know? But you shouldn't be trying to purposely live a bunch of life just to have a conversation, because then you just naturally have to have been living a bunch of life. Like Joe Rogan, why he has so much big viewpoints. I mean, like elk hunter, black belt in Taekwondo, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under like 2 different guys, you know, like
stand-up
comedian, podcaster.
He had like, you know, Fear Factor. He's been on sitcoms,
news radio.
Yeah, he's had an incredible career.
Yeah, like in his life experience, you know, like dad left, mom was a hippie. Moved from Boston to Florida to Boston to,
like, if you saw him in the 90s, like, you would never have said that guy's going to be the most powerful podcaster in the world. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So he, you know, he's a great example of, I think he's a great example of someone who's sincerely curious and where that can kind of bring you.
Yeah. And the sincerity curious part, because with me, I don't know, I'm realizing I'm only curious, I'm super curious about like 5 things.
Yeah.
And like, as in, those are my 5 super interests. Then I have little tiers on the side, but Rogan seems like he has like 15, 20 like super interests. Like,
totally.
Like, he can talk about pool the same way he talks about cars, the same way he talks about hunting. And
I talked to an author a while ago, and I used to ask people what they're passionate about, and I don't think she intentionally corrected me, but she did correct me in that she changed the way I think, which is, she's like, people should stop focusing on passion, because passion is, very few people are lucky enough to be passionate about things, but everybody can be curious about things. You know what I mean? And I think that's where Joe Rogan is like, he has his passions. MMA is his passion. Stand-up comedy is his passion.
Yeah.
Elk hunting would be his passion.
Yeah.
But he's curious about everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's what's cool, is like, he would never say, I don't really care about that, let's not talk about it. He'll lean in and be like, what do you mean by that?
Football. He doesn't actually give a shit about that. He really
or like wrestling. Who was it? I was listening to
like Aaron Rodgers. The only reason why he cares is just because he's boys with Aaron Rodgers, but that's not because of his football.
Right.
Apparently, like, Rogan's wife was gushing over Aaron Rodgers, like, and Rogan was the one being like, wow, like, even you affect my wife in football, because there's something about football that just has this like natural like cheerleader quarterback dating like thing that people all like gravitate from high school. It's some kind of social hierarchy shit. But that's the one thing I remember Rogan being like, I just watch it because you're my friend, and like Aaron Rodgers is playing, so that, but like, I actually don't know the rules and don't care. And
but then, I think it's cool that he does it anyway. He was talking to Rick Rubin, like the music producer, and like Rick Rubin's a huge wrestler, and so Joe Rogan
like
hates
WWE wrestling. Like,
yeah. And like, he used to be part owner of like a league or whatever, or like whatever they called it. And like, Joe Rogan was laughing. He's like, "What are you talking about? Like,
wait,
is this real?"
Are you talking about Rick Rubin or the guy from Smashing Pumpkins?
No, Rick Rubin.
Oh, him as well.
Yeah, like the big white hair, bearded fellow. No. And he was explaining. He's just like, he was deeply explaining his passion for wrestling, and Joe Rogan was laughing, like he thought this was like a bit. He's like, "No, you're fucking with me. There's no way that." But the way Rick Rubin explained it, it was like, I got it. Like, because he's like, but wrestling's fake. He's like, because you know that it's structured, it might be more real than football because you kind of know what you're getting in. Anyway, he does a way better job of explaining it.
Yeah.
But even on things that he doesn't like he's certainly not passionate about, he will sit and have like an honest conversation to be like, hey, why do you like this so much? As opposed to saying, let's not talk about it because you're stupid for liking it.
Yeah, I agree up to the point of the football thing, because I remember one time Brendan Schaub and this other guy, they went off on football. And that was the first time I actually saw Rogan like kind of get bored in a conversation. Like he literally couldn't engage into it. He was just like, he didn't know the players, he didn't know the rules, he didn't know the he didn't get it. But what I liked about him was he didn't try to force himself into the conversation.
Right.
He actually just laid back, and then he's like, no, keep going. Like this is like, I just realized I don't care about football.
Yeah. But, and you can't care about everything. Like, I mean, as you might want to try to, but there's certain conversations where it's just like, but that was basketball would be that for me, you know. It's like,
really?
I don't fucking care about basketball.
But you're kind of tall and stuff.
Yeah.
I always thought you played basketball.
My mom, I remember trying out for the basketball team when I was a kid, and then I played hockey growing up. Yeah. So my mom wanted me to play basketball for some reason. So I tried out like one trial, and I'm like, no, I don't want to play this. She was like really sad for me. I'm like, I just don't like it.
My buddy Kyle made this joke, and I'm saying it, Kyle, but like he was like, basketball, the dumber you look, the better defense you play.
Yeah,
because you're just going.
Well, I have a good Polish name. I feel like if you have a good Polish name, or like there's like Eastern European countries where a lot of same as like football, I suppose. It's like we're always on the defensive line, you know, like good old fashioned farmers or something like that.
Yeah. So Kondrat is a Polish last name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you watch wrestling at all? Or
no, I did when I was a kid. I loved wrestling. Yeah. Like I was telling my kids about like all the names. Like when I was a kid, it was like I would watch Stampede Wrestling all the time. Yeah. Like Ed Whalen.
How old are you, Mark? How old are you, Mark?
I'm 46.
Okay.
So Ed Whalen, do you know who?
Yeah.
Do you remember Ed Whalen?
Yeah.
So
he was the
Ed Whalen was like such an anomaly when I was a kid. But the older I get, I realize he was like Anchorman is actually like a dumbed down version of Ed Whalen. Ed Whalen was more Anchorman than Anchorman is. Like, honest to God, because he did the
Stampede Wrestling.
He did Stampede Wrestling, hockey. He did the weather on 2 and 7. He had his own radio editorial show. He had his own column in the paper.
Yeah.
He did commercials. Yeah. Like he was the man about town, man. Like he was the coolest guy. And like he would think about that. He would be doing like the Calgary Flames commentary, and then the next day, like the Cuban assassin would be like smashing his head into a turnbuckle.
Oh, he partook in the wrestling?
No, but he would be the interview. Oh, and so then every now and again, like the wrestler would be like, you know, like he would just get involved somehow. Like it was hilarious.
Okay.
So,
but did he ever get involved? Because like wrestlers already have their anchor guy usually. You know, like there's Mean Gene.
Yeah, like so he was the Mean Gene of Stampede Wrestling.
Okay, so like, but did he actually get involved in some of the angles? Like, did he get hit by a chair?
Oh yeah. Like I remember him getting smashed into the turnbuckle by. I'm sure it was the Cuban assassin.
And he sold it.
Oh God, yeah. Okay. And then the next day he's like, you know, doing the news. Like I'm like how does this work? He was such a cool guy. So when I was a kid, wrestling was a huge thing for me. Like Hulk Hogan. Yeah. You know, I was naming all the 90s Junkyard Dog.
Macho Man,
there were so many cool ones. And then for some reason I feel like when I was a kid, I feel like I'm pretending like I'm like 100, but I feel like there was just a certain thing of I always felt like you were supposed to age out of things. Like you were supposed to play video games to a certain point. Yeah. You were supposed to watch wrestling to a certain point. And then you were just like too old to do that. And then a lot of us didn't get that memo because like a lot of 45, 50-year-olds are still gaming. They're still watching. And I think that's fine. But I'm just like, I just assume that like we weren't supposed to do that anymore. And granted, I have my other vices that I do that I was supposed to grow out of. But like those are the ones that I did grow out of. I don't game. I think the controllers got too complicated for me. I was just like, once like it was like Super Nintendo, I'm like, yeah, no, I just like A, B, and then arrows. I'm good. And then wrestling, I was just like, okay, this is fake. I'm done with this.
Oh, okay. So you did age out of it.
I did age out of it. Yeah, I was just like, hey, this is enough. Like it got to the point where it's just like,
did you just not feel like an adult whenever you watched it? Was that the problem?
No, it just got stupid. Well, maybe it was when Hulk Hogan became a bad guy. I was like, no, Hogan, man. You're supposed to be a good guy.
That's when it got good.
No,
that's when it got really good.
And Andre the Giant died, and just no, my love for wrestling went away.
Yeah, I still love wrestling. I just haven't kept up with it as much. But I have a point to this. It wasn't just all of a sudden Mark and Shawn talking about wrestling.
I will say though, with where wrestling and where football are the same, and why I like football, I had never grew up playing football, but I love watching it, is because they're both like soap operas for men. Like there's this storyline to wrestling, and there's a storyline to football that you can't get in other sports because there's only 16 games. So like, when you're watching the NHL, and they're 4 games into the season and they're trying to sell it as a must-win game. It's like, it's not a must-win game. There's 82 games.
Yeah.
With football, you can sell it like, you're a few games in, you're at that point where you already have to win. So there's like the week-to-week storyline of NFL, which is similar to, like wrestling. There's always that storyline, that you get to follow.
Yeah. The NFL is real though, as in the storylines, like Travis Kelce's actually banging seeing Taylor Swift. And it's like, but unless that was orchestrated, who knows?
I think a lot of that stuff is, well, whether it's orchestrated or not, it's certainly like, it's leveraged to as much as it can be for the success of the league.
Yeah, it's amplified for sure, and kind of like a fictionalized, sensationalized.
100%.
Wrestling to me though, it's like I've always loved it off the jump because it's like watching it's like watching a live movie every week, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Like I never thought punching someone like like that was real, but. And I just love that it just shows all of like human nature.
Yeah.
Like, whatever's going on in the world at the time, you can summarize it into wrestling. Like the character, the characters in the early 90s and late 80s was definitely cartoonish. It was for us when we were kids.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. It went to more adult, right? Like like it was designed for kids. Like they even had a cartoon in the 80s.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
I think it was like Hulk Hogan and his Super Friends or
Yeah.
But yeah, all I'm trying to say is it reflects the times, and it's like a live action movie every week. And that's why I appreciate it. And then also just the physiques, like the cool looks and stuff. And then just the evolution of seeing some of these characters turn into who they are. Like I love watching Stone Cold Steve Austin start to just take over everything.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get inspiration in your own life because you're watching someone from the bottom go up, and you're also watching him morph and just and then what adds flavor to it is that that's not real per se, but then you get to see the live real time vying for that position in real life. Like it's like you got like multifaceted things to keep, you got the actual show, then you got the drama behind the show, but so it's like reality TV, and then
I think that's what Rick Rubin was saying is so we know going in that wrestling is not real.
Yeah.
And so then you can enjoy it for what it is. Whereas we go into football thinking that it is real. And so we don't really know what about football is. I'm not saying that the games are orchestrated, but there's certainly, you can manipulate things behind the scenes to, encourage certain teams to win. Like even it wasn't that long ago that think about hockey's the same way. All of a sudden in the playoffs, in the third period, the refs will just ref a totally different way.
Yeah.
Then they ref the whole game. How does that make sense on any level? And NBA think is still brutal for that, right?
Gotta be the worst.
And it was just like a well-known, we just put the whistle away for the third. It's just like, so the rules go out. So that way is a way of kind of orchestrating what's happening, right? Because it makes no sense that, okay, here's how we're going to do it for 82 games, but then for the next 16 games, we don't call penalties for the last period. It's just that makes no sense if you're looking at it objectively.
Yeah, it just shows there's different layers of the game happening, and it's just what I mean is it's almost like all the rich owners all got together to like, okay, the first 20 games, who cares? Even if you're 20-0 and you're 0-20, like we're gonna streamline it so these guys like so we can build
and so they're doing that. And I guess what I would say is wrestling at least does it overtly, right? And so there's like so it's actually more authentic in that way.
It's the most. It's also just so fascinating to me because it's such a reflection of the complexities of human nature. And what I mean by that is like, did you ever watch the 90s when it was starting to go kind of like from kid friendly to like edgy?
No, that's when I was just like, my brain wasn't able to process anymore.
Damn,
I was like, I wanted like Hulk Hogan to come out with like, I am a real American.
Well, he did eventually.
Yeah.
But I just remember the Mr. McMahon character because he started playing himself as an amplified version. He's the evil boss who only cares about money and runs his wrestlers to the ground. But they had all these segments of him like becoming like that super Me Too boss. He's always like getting like he got like Trish Stratus, who was like really, really hot back then, to he's like kiss his ass or whatever. Literally, that was like a skit. Like he had to pull his pants.
Yeah, see, I can't. I just
so,
like ugh.
So then like obviously that's sexual harassment or whatever. But then like in real life, then you find out he actually did do that to his actual secretary. Now she's suing him. And
right.
Like, so I'm kind of like, isn't this funny that we accepted watching that when it was like part of the skit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then like but then he did in real life, and now it's like jail time.
But I think that's like, what I didn't like about that. It was I'm like I don't think, and I'm not like one of those people who has like
I worded that so wrong. In real life, that should be jail time, but I'm just saying that we were shocked. I mean that he did that
100%. Yeah, like how
that's
shocked.
That's what I meant to say.
Like, no, I that's how I understood it for sure.
Okay,
but like what I don't understand is just like. And maybe it's just like as you get older and you have kids, it's just like, oh man, like, do I really want my kids, like, because it did go from like wholesome to like, okay, this is like really kind of weird, you know what I mean? Because then you can't like glorify that behavior and then like to your point, be stunned that behavior is happening. Like it's almost like there's almost like an admission in that storytelling of just like, oh, by the way, this is kind of how it goes, Well,
that's why Ric Flair has always been the most funny, because he in real life is Ric Flair.
Yeah,
like it's not an act. And Bill Burr had like I was crying laughing at Bill Burr's. He had a whole. It wasn't even a bit. Maybe it was a bit, but he was just having a bit about Ric Flair that 30 for 30 about Ric Flair.
Yeah,
you don't have to love wrestling to watch it like that. Watch that 30 for 30 on Ric Flair, and it's just like,
no, there's some awesome characters in that.
Entertaining, and
I was watching behind. Is it The Dark Side of the Ring?
Oh yeah, I love that series.
Because I had
well, I don't love it. I love it, but I'm always, every time I'm done watching an episode, I'm like, fuck, man, these people are all so messed up from wrestling.
Yeah, and there's so many good people like in the wrestling world, and there's good characters, and there's a lot. But it's there's a lot of crazy stuff that has happened, and like they're destroying their bodies for like the sake of it.
Yeah,
because I had Martha Hart on my podcast a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And so we talked about everything that happened with Owen and stuff like that. And there's a lot of shitty things that happen behind the scenes. So but is true with every sport, right?
Oh yeah.
But no, that's actually the longest I've ever talked about wrestling since 1989.
Okay.
since WrestleMania 4 when Hulk Hogan fought Randy Macho Man Savage and Elizabeth dumped him. No, that might be accurate actually.
Elizabeth did dump him and then
went with Hulk Hogan.
And who else? Didn't she? Macho Man had to come out and save her again, and then all these grown men were crying. Anyway, that's the
good old days.
I actually got to know Martha Hart as well from like I was bartending up at this bar up in the Southwest, and her son Oj would come in. And,
nice.
Yeah, I got to know them in my last year bartending up there, and Martha's cool. Like she's so
super
cool,
nice,
so nice, and like so I got to listen to that episode they had her on, because like I mean, what she went through was just so insane, man, and then I
think she did a good job of navigating it. it's just, the Hart family is such an institution of Calgary. So it's
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm torn at that whole situation because like at that time, I remember Martha was just straightforward. She's like, yeah, me and Brett don't have a relationship anymore. We don't talk. And I was like, okay, like obviously that thing is so crazy and complex. And then side of me is like, that's Brett the Hitman Hart.
I know.
Like, that's that's.
Well, and that's the
goosebumps
problem,
talking.
Like wrestling was their lives, right? So it's just like, how does he separate, wrestling from his life? And it's those are that's the bad side about sport and stuff like that, is the dark side, I guess. But she's an amazing human being. But then Brett, from what I've met him a few times, and he's, as far as I can tell, an amazing human being as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
within the wrestling game, he definitely survived it. Like he didn't turn into whatever you call it, just like he didn't get wrecked by it, if you will. I don't know, because there's just something about pretending for so many days in a week that maybe it warps your psyche, and then you're kind of blurred reality and fiction, and they start behaving like that.
Well, they're wrestling. Like, have you ever seen their house, like in the Southwest, like where they grew up?
I watched that. I watched a couple biographies on it, but no, I've never physically been there. Yeah, it's huge. It's an old mansion, right?
Yeah. I live close to it. I run by it all the time, and it's but you just think, like, all the wrestlers from all over would come and like hang out and wrestle there, and like it wasn't. That was the way they grew up. It's the way they lived, man. And that was like, they were world famous, and they're all from Calgary. So there's a cool connection to wrestling, but I don't know. I haven't watched it in years.
Hey, Mark. I'm going to wind this down here.
Yeah, of course, man.
That's the fun thing about podcasting. I had a couple bullet points. We hit most of them, but then we just got off on tangent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
then it took on a life of its own here. I got a quick question for you before we wind this down. How'd you get to know Nicole?
So Nicole is friends with Bill.
Okay.
And so Bill is like one of those guys who just is, he's so good at bringing, we always talk about the Alberta Beer family, the people that work for us and with us at the festivals. And, there's all these like stereotypes or cliches of what people think, who puts on beer festivals. And, one thing that Bill, this is Bill's strength for sure, is he's always been able to bring a really unique group of people together to work with us on the festivals. And so Nicole for years was a big part of that group. And, Bill's mom, who passed away a couple years ago, she was kind of like I think the matriarch is the right word for that, of the kind of the Alberta Beer family. And, we have so many cool people. And so, Bill, brings all these people together, and Nicole was a big part of that for a lot of years. So I can take no credit for that. That's a Bill strength right there.
So Bill just kind of like recruited Nicole into
and he's just always like, every year we have like, and luckily like we've had, I was talking to one of our staff that helps out at all the festivals, and this is her 13th year helping us, and so like we've been able to retain so many awesome people. And then just every year, there's more people coming into the mix. And it's just, so for me, it's always so much fun to hang out after a festival with all these people. Like my mom still volunteers. I have a cousin that volunteers. And so we all just kind of get to hang out and have a beer together. And it's such a unique, like I call it a family. And like I said, Nicole was a big part of that for a lot of years.
Okay, I've known Nicole for years, and like just every beer fest is like, oh guys, I gotta take this off. I gotta go do beer fest. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's almost like she's going back to like a high school reunion. Like every year.
It feels like it. It feels like a family reunion every time. Like even just with and there's just so many facets of it. Like so many people that have been in the beer industry forever. Getting to see. Like Don, who works for Brewster's, he's been there forever. He's done every single one of our festivals, even predating the beer festivals, like Festivus he did. So it's just really fun to get to hang out with all of them, and just, it's so, like the Calgary one's coming up, and it's just like knowing that we all get to kind of get back together is always like a big part of why it's so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll end on this. So what's in the near future for yourself here? Just continue doing all the festivals, continue doing your podcast, continue like the course, and kind of keep growing these little in these realms.
Yeah, we're always, so like after our biggest one is the Calgary Festival. So Calgary will be in May, and then we always kind of take that time to reflect on what. It's like any business, right? Some things are working, some things aren't working. And so you kind of got to be like, okay. And the industry is always evolving. And so what we've always tried to be is a reflection of what the industry looks like. And so, we want to say like, okay, like what are people asking us to do? And so kind of, is there new projects on that we should be working on? Is there some projects that have kind of like lasted their lifespan? Asking all those questions. And then on a personal level, I've been working on Explore 84, which I'm just in beta testing for an app right now on that. So I've been working a lot on that. So hopefully get to put some more time into that. But ABF is still, for us, just like what we love to do and keeps us busy.
Actually, I have one more little quick question for you. What has the trend been like lately? Because what I'm asking is, I feel like just because I used to go out a lot. That was just my routine. I'm engaged, man, but I have no kids, so I'm still. So me and my girl like to go out and enjoy the town. But I thought I used to have a pulse on the hospitality industry, but what's your opinion? Or what's your analysis? It seems like it's changed quite a bit, and what I mean by that is like Gen Z and younger, they really don't seem to drink as much. They socialize differently, it seems. So
I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think things have just gotten a lot more expensive. Like living lives is more expensive than it was. At least I feel like expendable income isn't what it used to be. I would say, I'm generalizing. Obviously, some people have lots and whatever, but I think it's like more people are more interested in kind of quality product. So it's like quality over quantity, if that makes sense. Like when I was a kid, it'd be like 25-cent draft at Cowboys. Let's go, so maybe that stuff doesn't happen anymore.
Those were sloppy nights.
Yeah. Holy. And so I think for that reason, like it's good that maybe that stuff isn't happening. I don't necessarily, want my kids in a few years to be doing that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think that people are a little bit more, I don't know if discerning is the right word. Chain restaurants to some degree are less interesting to younger people, I think, which is good. They're more interested in okay, who's the chef? What type of food is it? Is it high quality? So they're just kind of like, they're more discerning. They're more like, they want to go out, but they want to make sure that they're getting, for how much it's going to cost, it has to be a good experience. And then I also just think, for whatever reason, people do stay at home more than they used to. When I was a kid,
COVID probably just warped their habits or something.
Like when I was a kid, we didn't when I was in university, we'll say I didn't have a phone to text people. So it'd be like, okay, let's meet at this place on Friday at this time. And you just kind of had to go. If you didn't go, you were bailing on them. And so you probably weren't getting, called next weekend, right? Like if you were like, so nowadays, like how many people, canceled the last minute, you have your phone, like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So people tend to stay home more. And I think that sucks. I mean, I like meeting face to face. Like that's kind of my preference, but, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if there's like,
well, how have you noticed it in regards to the festival? Like, more is the festival still stupid busy all the time?
No, we've never ever taken for granted that anyone from a brewery to a restaurant to someone buying a ticket is just going to come. Like I was joking about this with someone the other day where they'll say like, like how, and I'm generalizing and being an asshole, let's say, but if an accountant ran your business, they'd say, okay, for this year, we're going to do 10% more than we did last year. And it's like, okay, well, how are we going to? So the assumption is we'll do what we did last year and we'll just tack on 10%. And I'm like, well, that's not really a strategy. That's wouldn't that be nice to just tack on 10% every year?
Calculate it like that.
Yeah.
To a T,
and so it's
exponential like, growth to the
right.
moon,
So that's not really a strategy. So like for me, you can't take for granted that anybody's ever going to. So for me, festivals, I can't take for granted that anybody's ever going to do the festival. So every brewery, how do I address every distillery, cidery? How do I address what their needs are and make sure that the festival is relevant to address their needs? Same as restaurants and chefs. So the festival always has to evolve so that they feel like they're being able to showcase themselves properly. And then from a customer perspective, it's like, okay, well, how do we get the people interested in coming to a show? And so it can't be the same show that it was 10 years ago. It has to be fresh every year. And then, how do we attract a younger audience so that, the people that own the breweries, distilleries, the restaurants are continually being showcased in front of a younger audience? So those are questions that we're always asking ourselves, and we're always implementing strategies to make sure that when people come to the festival, they feel like it's a fresh festival every year. Keep some of the components the same, obviously. So this year, like we have a big after party, like right attached to it with DJs and stuff. That's not mine doing. That's, Bill and Dylan from the team have really been spearheading that. But, it's designed to attract a younger audience that's going to be coming and experiencing the festival for the first time.
The after party is for people buying tickets, or
or people can buy a ticket to the after party too if they want. But so it's like full on like DJs. It's in a different room. DJs. It would be like a rave essentially.
Oh, wow.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, it sounds like you guys are kind of literally doing what wrestling had to do when they evolved.
Yeah, that's right.
From the
you have to keep it. Yeah, exactly. You have to keep it fresh, and you have to. The second that you take anything for granted is usually when shit starts hitting the fan. So we're always we're lucky in that we love what we do. So we're always asking like, okay, how can we make it better? What can we do? So it never gets easier. Like if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I don't think it doesn't get easier. I don't think it can ever get easier. Like
just the challenges will change, right? But there'll always be challenges.
Yeah. Well, because if anything's ever stagnant, it literally starts to die out. It's just the way life has always been. Mark, great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
I'm glad you came down. Beerfest is May 3rd and 4th in Calgary. And I'll even put the Beerfest website on the show notes there. We're going to be there, Kaks Bar and Podcast. Thanks for getting us a spot there.
Yeah.
We're going to be podcasting throughout the Beerfest, actually.
Nice.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Cool.
Okay, Mark. All right. Everyone have a good day. Okay, bye.